Hello viewers, here is a Vtech model CS-6114 cordless phone. I'm going to do a very brief review on this telephone, and if there's enough interest I'll do a more in-depth review later on. So first I will introduce this telephone as being one of probably the cheapest offerings on the market today. This telephone, you can find it new for under $15, which is even cheaper than like basic corded trimline phones. So it's definitely a budget-based telephone. And with that being said, I didn't have very high expectations for this telephone, but I was pleasantly impressed with this telephone. The things I like about it, first one being the base unit design. As you can see, it's relatively small. It doesn't take up a lot of space on the table. But the other thing which I found really interesting is the fact that it has a standard wall mount. So you can take the telephone and hang it on the wall, and it would hang just like this. You don't need an additional overpriced accessory bracket that you have to order from the manufacturer, something like that, which is oftentimes the case with the cordless phones of today. So that's a really nice thing about it. The other thing I like is that the buttons are very large. A problem I see with most telephones today is the buttons are too small for my preference, and I end up pressing more than one button at a time when trying to dial quickly. This one does not have the problem. These buttons are very large, and I have no issues accurately pressing each one without pressing another. The backlighting on the display and the buttons is green, and the buttons are very legible. The display leaves a bit to be desired. It's showing up very nicely in the video, but in person, I mean, it's plenty legible, but it does leave a little bit to be desired in terms of contrast. I would have liked to see a little bit more contrast in the display, but again, it's plenty readable, and in this level of telephone, I'm not going to be that critical because you're not paying much. Sound quality on this telephone is surprisingly good. The audio is very loud that comes out of it. I've had the lowest volume setting even be too loud on a couple of occasions, depending on who you're talking to. I've never had to use past the lowest setting. It's always been loud enough. And I can't really personally testify this because nobody talks to me on this phone, or in the sense that they're using this phone. But when I've talked to other people using this telephone, they've said that I sound very clear. So the audio pickup seems to be plenty reasonable. Now I will underscore that the tonal balance of the earpiece is slightly out of line in the sense that it lacks a deep, rich low-end tone to it. It's mostly situated up in the higher frequencies. It makes it very clear, but it also doesn't make it sound that nice. There are certainly telephones that sound better than this, but they also cost way more than it. Some other features that it has that I like are caller ID phone book match, so when you put a number in the phone book, it'll display with that name and the caller ID. Another feature I really like, which I have not seen in any other cordless phone, is the fact that the date and time stamp is continually displayed on the bottom of the unit. You can see it there. This is in the standby mode, and when I turn the phone on, you'll see that the time and date is still there, and a separate timer comes up for the telephone call itself, which I think is brilliant because every other phone that I've used, the current time and date disappears when you turn the telephone functionality on, and that seems ridiculous. I will say that the menus are a bit confusing on this telephone at first. One of the things that I've felt very awkward to use is this navigation button. Most phones, or a lot of them today, this works as a multi-directional key, whereas you can scroll up and down with it. Whereas in this case, it's nothing more than just to simply, press it. It doesn't go up or down. It's just a selection button, and you have to navigate up and down with these buttons on the left and right. which is okay. Nothing wrong with that. It's just something to adapt to if you've been using other telephones which have the navigation key in the center. The battery life on the phone is rated at 5 days standby, which leaves a bit to be desired. That's a fair bit below what the typical offering on the telephones of today is. The talk time is rated for 7 hours, which is all, well, it depends on what phone you look at. That's not bad. There's certainly telephones that get more than that, but there's much nicer phones than this, or should I say more expensive phones than this, that get a fair bit less. So I would say that the talk time is pretty good. Standby time leaves a bit to be desired. The overall battery longevity, I would say, is very good. I bought this telephone used. It was installed for a couple of years and used. I bought it after that, and original battery is still present. And to hold the charge, fine. I talked on this phone for over 2 hours at a time, and charge only goes down halfway. So on a used battery, that's pretty good. I've been able to get about 4 days of standby out of it, but again, I'm working with a used battery. If it was new, I have no doubt that it would get all 5 days and all 7 hours. The battery is a nickel metal hydride battery. It's 300 milliamps, very cheap and easy to replace. Let's see, what else do I underscore about it? The display legibility leaves also a bit to be desired. I would like to see a bit more contrast in the display, especially because the text is on the small side. I have no issue seeing it, but I also don't have any vision impairments. If you are visually challenged, you may have a bit of difficulty seeing the telephone, or not the telephone, the stuff on the display. It does have a phone book and a caller ID. The storage limit for those things is only 30 numbers, which is absurd. Memory is cheap these days, and 16-digit entries take up so little space. You could have easily had thousands of entries in this telephone and raised the cent maybe 1 or 2 cents, or raised the price 1 or 2 cents. I don't know why they only put 30 entries in there. That's really ridiculous. I mean, I'm not that popular, and I filled up the phone book just with places I don't know, like restaurants and things like that. That's about all there's to say about this. I will say that the overall feel of the handset is really light, and so to me that gives it a pretty cheap feeling. But no, I mean it's been holding up just fine. It doesn't have speakerphone, which it doesn't really bother me. I don't use speakerphone that much. That's not something that's very clearly stated in the description, so I will underscore that there is in fact no speakerphone on this. And it also doesn't have a belt clip, which is kind of annoying because I like to use the belt clip. Also doesn't have a headset jack, which I think is okay given the fact that most people, I would imagine, don't use that functionality. So to have that on a budget-based phone is probably not necessary. But a belt clip sure would have been nice. Find handset button is inside the base there. And one thing I will say about this telephone that I really don't like, and this is really the only major issue I have with this phone, is that the ring volume is extremely quiet. And if this is your only phone, you're probably going to miss a lot of calls, just because the ringer volume is very quiet. Just so you can hear what it sounds like, I'll play that. It's certainly audible, but it's not that loud. If you have the television set on, or you're listening to music, or you have like an appliance, an air conditioner, or whatever running, that's going to be drowned out a bit. So, really, the only thing that I would say about this phone that leaves a lot to be desired is the ring volume. Otherwise, this is an overall a really good phone at a really good price. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. I have underscored the idea of doing more product reviews. It's just one of those things I never really got around to doing, but I'm going to try to start doing it more often now if this one has a lot of success. Also, if you're interested in seeing more of this telephone, I can make a more in-depth review in the future, just leave it in the comments as a video request. So thank you for watching, and out.